Good morning. This is Pastor Stewart Waterhouse with 10 minutes after midnight. This is my video blog, part 2. In part 2, we're going to explore PCP air guns. Post-apocalypse, you're definitely going to need to be able to defend your herd, whether it be a goat, sheep, your children, your family. Anyone can own a PCP air gun in most jurisdictions, and basically it shoots a pellet through pre-charged air. And let me show you how it works. Basically, you have looks like a bicycle tire pump, doesn't it? There's a little gauge here on the bottom. You can see the gauge so you can know how much you've put in, and you insert the probe in the end of the gun, and then you just pump it up like you would a tight bicycle tire pump. The only difference is this produces about 4,500 psi, which is a lot more than what a bicycle pump would do at maybe 50 psi. So you can't use a bicycle pump. You have to have one of these. The pellets, well, you got different. This is a pretty standard pellet for a 30 caliber at and of course you'll load it in a magazine that goes into the gun, whether it be semi-automatic or bolt action or pump action, whatever. Let's see, it says 66.2 grains. I want the gun to be the fastest foot per second possible, so you have a flatter trajectory, but you don't want to exceed the sound barrier at 1100 foot per second, because then pellets become unstable when it goes through the sound barrier. So you want to stay subsonic. So basically, and it has a nose. I recommend you stick with a rounded nose. They're more accurate, they penetrate better. What the fin does is stabilize it, much like a badminton. So the wind, as it's flying through the air, hits the fin and keeps the pellet flying straight. Whereas a powder burner gun, the bullet has to spin. Now you can fire a slug in a pellet gun too, but pellet gun barrels probably don't have a fast enough twist rate to stabilize a slug as it does a pellet. Now let me tell you a story first here. And I was feeding the goats, and I put the food on the ground, and all the goats came running to get the food. And what happened is, after I walked away and the goats were eating peacefully, I was about 40 feet away, and a big, huge wild boar came out of the woods. And we're talking about a big, big one. And he came right up and was eating the food with the goats. He's going to get selfish on the food, and he's going to rip his tusk into one of the goats and hurt him badly. I had to do something, and fortunately I had a carbine air gun with me. Semi-automatic, kind of a minimum power one, as you'll see in a moment why I went with more power down the road. So I took careful aim, and you know, I wanted a headshot on the pig so I could drop him instantly, because pellet gun doesn't have the hydrostatic shock stopping power that a powder burner gun does. So you rely on penetration instead, and that penetration needs to hit the brain or lung heart shock. But a lung heart will take longer because it's still not instant stopping power. Anyway, so I aimed for right behind the ear, and I'm a good shot, and so I know I hit where I was supposed to hit. And he immediately looked up and looked around, and he saw me, and he began to charge. He was coming at me. I aimed for directly between the eyes and took my second shot, and he yelled out a huge squeal, but he still kept coming. And I know again that I had hit him square on. I was shooting about 40 foot-pound energy, and it just wasn't enough. And the pig was still coming. He was almost at me now when I took the third shot. So for the third shot, I didn't have time for a careful aim. I just shot for center mass of the head and pulled the trigger, and I really have no idea where in the head it hit him. At that point, he veered off for cover. He decided it hurt too much to keep coming at me, and ran into the bushes, and there he dropped dead. Yeah, so basically, for a pig, you really, a large pig like I was dealing with, you need 90 foot-pound energy. For a human, you need 60 foot-pound energy. And for a dog or a coyote, you need 50 foot-pound energy. So basically, you're going to want to select a air gun that will be a minimum of 60 foot-pound energy, preferably 90 or more foot-pound energy. And then you're good. You'll want to select an air gun with that foot-pound energy. You're going to want to decide, you know, like I said, you want somewhere between 850 and 950 feet per second. That gives you your most power and also your most level trajectory, you know, to have a wider point-blank range. So what happens is if you buy an air gun that's say 1100 feet per second, which would be right at the sound barrier, then the problem is the pellet will become unstable. So you'll go for a heavier pellet, which will tame down the speed and still keep the energy, see? So what I've gone with is the 66 grain pellet instead of a 44 grain to tame down the air gun I'm fixing to show you. As an alternative, of course, you can tune the gun for a lower feet per second. That's no problem either, but why should I settle for less energy when the gun's capable of more? So I just use a heavier pellet to bring it down. On the other hand, if you buy an air gun that's like only 800 feet per second with a heavier pellet, then what you want to do is use a lighter pellet to increase that speed to get a flatter trajectory, because you want to stay at a minimum of 850 to 950. That's where you want to be. So let me show you what I got. This is an AEA. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see better. There we go. And I think I can zoom out some more even. Yeah. So this is a 30 caliber. It's a Bullpup. Now what a Bullpup is, you have no stock. You see it, the back of the receiver to the butt plate there's no stock. So to make up for it, normally your trigger would be here. That's too close. So the trigger is moved forward instead of directly on the receiver, and then it just uses a remote rod internally to get back to the receiver to discharge the weapon. This is the air cartridge. This comes off, and there's a hole right here. See if you can see it. That's where you insert the probe from your pump, so you can pump up the air, because the air goes in here. And this one has a little bit longer air tank, because the back of the air tank, this part right here, is actually the plenium from a regulator I have in there, and the regulator keeps the shots consistent. So even though the air pressure is dropping here, the air pressure to the pellet is consistent. That makes for more accuracy. On the front, I can unscrew this little cap here. It's a 32-inch barrel, by the way. And then I can screw a silencer on it. Pellet guns aren't regulated, so you can have a silencer, you can have full auto. Yes, they make full auto 30 caliber. That would be the Hatson Blitz. And when you screw on the sound suppressor, it doesn't make it quiet. These are quite loud, okay, but it takes the edge off. It cuts it 8 to 12 decibels. 8 to 12 decibels makes it a little bit quieter. It takes the edge off the sound. And of course, again, if you shoot at 1150 feet per second or more, you're going to break the sound barrier and you're going to get a sharp crack as well, just like on a powder gun. 32-inch barrel. Then I have, let's see if I can show you the specs on this gun. This is made by AEA, and the cost is about $450 to $500. Because it is a bullpup, there's no place for an adjustable cheek weld, so I just put Velcro here so that the receiver wouldn't be hard metal against my cheek, and the Velcro works. And as you can see, it's no problem. And again, you do want a strap here, because as you can see, it really helps stabilize. So I have a Leupold scope, and in a minute we'll get into the app to see the trajectory at different distances. So there's reticle and subreticle in here, and of course an adjustable turret. So there's two ways you can shoot it to different distances. You can dial in your distance. The app would tell you how many clicks to turn, and you can see the numbers on there. That's in mil rads. I like mil rads better than MOA. That's just my preference. But or you can just, for quicker firing, just use the subreticle. So you can keep the center crosshair using the turret, or use a different reticle, subreticle for your, which I'll display here, for your distances. This one is zeroed in at 150 feet or 50 yards, and that would give me a plus or minus error of ½ an inch. Because see, what happens is the scope is higher than the barrel. This is about 2 1/4 inch or 2 1/2 inch, something like that. And so you aim the barrel up slightly to bring it in line with the scope. And so you're near zero then when the pellet comes up and matches the scope. It's going to be about 20 yards or 60 feet. So if I'm firing closer than 60 feet, you see the pellet will be slightly lower. And again, I can use the subreticle to correct for that. But then from 20 yards out to 50 yards is your point blank range. But in the middle, say at 100 feet, you'd be a ½ inch high, because you decide what point blank range you want depending on how accurate you want it to be. You'd have a longer range if you can go for 1 inch high. If you want to stay within a ½ inch, you can dial it within a ½ inch, and your point blank range would be shorter. I think ½ inch is acceptable, so I zero it at 50 yards, and that actually keeps me within a ½ inch all the way out to 60 yards. And of course I could shoot out to 200 yards just using the subreticle or turning the turret, right? So what this power is on this is about, at the muzzle, 132 foot-pound inches. Okay, and at 50 yards, it's still 100 foot-pound inches. So that's how much power is lost over that distance. And as we said, to shoot a pig, we need 90. So at 100, I'm still good all the way out there. You know, and to shoot a dog that's attacking the herd, we need 50 foot-pound inches, and I'm good out to 200 yards doing that. So no problem. And in my reticle, which I'm displaying on the screen, you can see the point blank range, which shows on the reticle. I think it shows 21 yards to 50 yards, and then you'll see how many yards on each sub extension on down. And you'll see some sideways ones too. So for example, if your subject is doing a brisk walk at 50 yards from you, and let's say the dog is doing a brisk walk at 3 miles per hour, you can see where you need to adjust left, right on your subreticle to compensate for that 3 miles per hour. It's more than you'd realize. Even on a powder cartridge gun, the bullet may be faster than the pellet. It's still more than you would realize, and that's why if somebody's shooting at you and you run sideways, chances are they can't hit you unless they actually have gun knowledge in order to compensate, because by the time the bullet reaches you, you're no longer in the same position. Because you can run 12 miles an hour and they just can't hit you. So with the pellet gun at 50 yards, 3 miles per hour, you're going to want to lead by about 9 inches. So that gives you all that information inside the scope. The Leupold scope, it costs about 300 bucks. So, you know, 300 and 450 and another 50 bucks for several tins of pellets. What are we at? 800 bucks and you're good to go. I hope that helps. You know, I don't, there's considerations which we're not going to get into in this video, and that is what's ethical and what's not. I really don't like shooting animals. I do it in defense of my herd only. Or maybe I have to put down a pet that got hit by a car and there's no chance for my beloved goat to recover, and I don't want it to suffer. So these are all considerations. If you used it in self-defense, basically there's 2 rules you got to go by. Number 1, you have a duty to escape instead of confront. So if you have a path of escape available, you have to take it instead of shooting another human being. This is called back to the wall. You can only use deadly force when you have no way to escape. Number 2 requirement would be you have to be fear of life and limb. Okay, just because you can't escape doesn't mean you can use deadly force. You can only use deadly force if you're afraid that the assailant's going to severely harm or kill you, or your child. You know, you can't do it over $100 bill because he's stealing your wallet. You just simply, that would be wrong. Now, I know you may be in a state that's a stand your ground law. It doesn't make it right before God. Okay, so you have the ethical or moral side as well, and I'm saying you got to meet those 2 criteria for biblical requirements. Number 1, you have a duty to escape, so you have to be back to the wall. Stand your ground doesn't mean in your castle. Your home is your castle. You can't be expected to escape out of your home. Maybe wisdom would require that, but usually you would move yourself to a safe room in your home, and then if the assailant penetrates in your safe room, you really have no choice. But you don't necessarily have to go into the safe room. You might not even have a safe room, or you might have to be defending your children or whatever. Your castle is your castle. It's not a stand your ground. It's a different doctrine. It's the castle doctrine. But even then, just because they're in your home and stealing your wallet, it doesn't give you a free right to shoot them. You need to be afraid of life and limb. The assailant's coming at you. Maybe he's got something to bludgeon you with, or you know, you have reasonable fear of life and limb, right? But those are the 2 criteria you got to meet. And so yeah, pick up one of these. You really will need it. Thank you. Goodbye.